Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. Welcome to Full Circle. It's our fourth night of the broadcast. We are again live from our newsroom here in New York City. And I'm actually here about on time tonight. How about that? It's the little things. I try, I know. As always, we want to hear from you. Weigh in with your thoughts in the comments. If you've had enough of what everyone else has to say during the broadcast, just swipe the comments right for quiet mode. On Full Circle tonight, Mr. Putin coming to Washington. Apparently the first summit was such a success, at least according to the president. A second one may already be in the works. Plus the 5 stories you asked me to dig into, from spy games to sugary drinks. Your top stories are coming up. And later, the 180, your chance to ask me some questions. Tonight's topic, the lengths a reporter has to go to get a story, from choppering into a disaster zone to sprinting through the newsroom like an idiot for last night's broadcast. I like to think nothing can stop me from reporting the news. Oh, you're showing that again. Great, thank you. I run like a goofball. Ask me any question you want, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. And my question for you, sugary drinks for kids, ban them or bottoms up? We'll explain the story later, but for now, please vote. If you're watching live on your phone or tablet, you should see your choices on the bottom half of the screen. Vote away, then swipe down to clear it. We'll get you the final results before the end of the show. We'll start with the first thing first. One of the top trending stories on Facebook this second, and it is Russia related, but unlike everything else on the subject, no one's really arguing over it. No one in the Senate, at least. By a 98-0 vote late today, Democrats and Republicans alike passed a resolution rebuking Vladimir Putin's attempt to get President Trump to hand over a former U.S. diplomat for questioning. The Russians want to get their hands, in particular, on Michael McFaul, the former ambassador to Russia. Today, the Senate said no way. However, today's resolution is non-binding. Now, for the one thing you need to know that also has a Russia connection, sometime this fall, one of the main storylines in Washington could be Mr. Putin comes to Washington. That's the takeaway from this tweet from White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders just this afternoon. And I'm quoting, "In Helsinki, POTUS agreed to ongoing working-level dialogue between the two Security Council staffs. President Trump asked Ambassador John Bolton to invite President Putin to Washington in the fall, and those discussions are already underway." Well, that was a surprise to the nation's top intelligence chief, Dan Coats, who's the director of national intelligence. Coats actually learned of the invitation during a live interview at the Aspen Security Forum that was being moderated by NBC's Andrea Mitchell.
We have some breaking news. The White House has announced on Twitter that Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House in the fall.
Say that again?
Vladimir Putin coming
Did I
to
hear
the...
you? Did I hear you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
Yeah, it's funny. Although, is it really funny? That expression on Dan Coates' face says it all. Earlier during that same interview, Coates said that he had no idea what took place when President Trump and Vladimir Putin met one-on-one in Helsinki. Still doesn't, which, if you think about it, is quite a statement from the nation's top spy chief. So was this when he asked about the notion of the two leaders actually being alone? Listen.
The president has already mentioned some things that happened in that meeting. I think we will learn more, but that is the president's prerogative. If he had asked me how that ought to be conducted, I would have suggested a different way.
Well, as for a possible Putin visit, the Russian dissident and former chess champion Garry Kasparov summed up his view on the occasion in a tweet. Quote, "Like any good real estate dealer," Kasparov writes, "Trump wants to give Putin a personal tour of the house he bought online." Moving on, time for our Full Circle interview. Joining me is a woman who has had a front row to history under two presidents, so sort of. Beck Dorey-Stein was a White House stenographer from 2012 to 2017 under Presidents Obama and President Trump, but left because she said she couldn't be proud of where she worked anymore. She's also the author of the memoir, the new memoir, From the Corner of the Oval. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So the past weekend you wrote in an op-ed and you said, you said Trump wasn't a fan of stenographers. Why was it important? Why is it important for the president to have stenographers in the room?
It's important because it's actually the first line of defense to make sure that the press office, the presidential archive, and the press itself are all getting an accurate quotation of what's happening.
I understand when the president first came in to the office, somebody in your office said, oh, he doesn't like to have a microphone close to his face.
That's right. My boss came back from trying to track down the press, just a press wrangler and the press secretary, and we found out early on he doesn't like to have a microphone near his face, which is a huge issue because then that was their excuse for not allowing us in the room when we really needed to be in the room.
So that's how you would work. You would usually just put a microphone near the president, and you would sort of sit in a corner and just take
In
notes.
the Oval Office, we actually put 2 recorders down on the coffee table, but on the plane, on Air Force One, it's really loud, so you have to have a microphone up close to the person's mouth. And so all of a sudden it was like, how are we going to do a gaggle? And actually for the first gaggle on Air Force One, President Trump went back and talked to the press. I wasn't there for it.
So when President Obama would speak, oftentimes he would tell people, well, check the transcript, check the record.
Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest way to clear up any sort of confusion about exactly what was said. We have this recording, we're impartial. My boss started under President Reagan, so for all of these previous administrations, everyone knew, hey, you want the answer, check the transcript.
There's a permanent record.
Yeah.
So did it bother you? Like this
I
way?
left. Of course it bothered me. I was there, I had a role, I had an important role, and all of a sudden he was having interviews, he was having briefings, he was talking to Bill O'Reilly for an hour, and I wasn't there for that, which is a really dangerous thing.
When O'Reilly came for an interview, Bill O'Reilly actually sat down with him for an hour before the interview.
Yes.
Without a record.
No, I wasn't there. A stenographer was not present. So
That's, by the way, kind of unheard of, because usually if you go to interview the president, you have like 10 minutes.
Well, it defeats the purpose to have an interview if you're already talking for an hour beforehand. And also, again, it's dangerous where Bill O'Reilly could come out of that meeting and say, the president said A, B, and C, and I'm not there to say, no, he didn't. Here's the transcript.
And certainly in a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin, the idea that there's no official transcript.
And that could, sometimes heads of state would talk, President Obama would speak to other heads of state, and I wasn't there, but there were always senior advisors there, so that's what really struck me with this meeting with Putin, that there were no senior advisors in the room, and also that it went on for so long.
There's some move to get the translators to testify. How are the translators' notes different than a stenographer?
How are the translators' notes different?
Yeah.
So we have a recording. We have an audio recorder that's going on, that's running, and so if there's any question, we can always refer to the audio itself and play it back, whereas the translators are keeping notes, but it's just their notes, it's their interpretations of it.
It's just shorthand for what they have to translate. It's fascinating. Victoria Stein, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Coming up now, the 5 things you want to know. You voted on your top stories on this page, and we spent the day digging into them. Here are your top 5. Coming in at number 5, Baltimore, Maryland has become the first major city to ban sugary drinks from kids' menus. Instead, the new Healthy Kids Meals law requires that restaurants offer only water, milk, or 100% fruit juice. The Baltimore City Commissioner said this about the decision: the science is clear. One of the biggest contributors to childhood obesity is sugary drinks, and childhood obesity is a major risk factor for diabetes, heart disease, and early death. Now, look in the past, I've certainly indulged in a Diet Coke or Coke Zero here or there, but I definitely didn't start that habit until I was much older and could handle my caffeine. Anyway, what do you think? We're still collecting your votes on the topic. Not sure I really handle caffeine very well, though, now that I think about it. Sugary drinks for kids, ban them or bottoms up? We'll get you the final answer at the end of the show in just a couple minutes. The number 4 story you voted on today, guns made mostly from the same stuff that Lego bricks are made out of. This is fascinating. The maker of the first 3D printable gun is claiming victory after a multi-year battle with the federal government over whether blueprints for how to make a 3D printed gun should be allowed online. Original plans for the gun went up in 2013, were downloaded 1 million times before the U.S. government ordered them to be removed, arguing that the files could violate the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, which restricts what military-related technology is allowed to leave the country. But with the new settlement, Americans will now have access to the 3D drawings and are exempt from export restrictions. Critics argue that as these guns become more sophisticated and less expensive, there may be a rise in so-called ghost guns, which are unregistered firearms without any kind of a serial number. At number 3 today, the cover of Time magazine. For the second month in a row, Time has put a provocative photo illustration of President Trump on its cover, this time morphing him into Russian President Vladimir Putin. The artist behind the image says it's meant to represent this particular moment in history. She added that her goal was to help readers, quote, stop and think when it comes to the similarities between the two leaders. Last month, Time chose this cover to illustrate the crisis at the border. Shows a towering figure of President Trump looming over a sobbing child with the caption, "Welcome to America." Probably neither of those issues will hang in Trump golf resorts. On to the number 2 story you voted to know more about. Just about 30 minutes ago, we passed 2 important deadlines for the Trump administration when it comes to reuniting children separated from their parents at the border. A U.S. district judge has ruled that the government must be finished by 6 p.m. Eastern today, figuring out which adults in ICE detention are verified parents of separated kids. The other deadline provide a list of names of parents who are not eligible for reunification with their children. Now, it's unclear if the administration met those deadlines. CNN is standing by for the latest court filing. In total, 2,551 kids between 5 and 17 were separated from their parents at the border. And in the latest numbers CNN has, there are still 1,609 parents of those kids in detention facilities, which means it's possible hundreds of parents separated at the border may have already been deported. All of this against the backdrop of a looming July 26 deadline to reunite all separated kids with their parents. See if the administration meets that deadline. At number 1 today, who is Maria Butina? She's the 29-year-old accused Russian spy who's now behind bars in Washington. According to federal prosecutors, while Butina was a graduate student in the United States, she attempted to exchange sex for political access and communicated with Russian intelligence. According to prosecutors and CNN reporting, Butina allegedly spent years aiming to set up back-channel communications between Russia and the Republican Party through the National Rifle Association, the NRA, as well as between Russia and the Trump campaign. Butina has pleaded not guilty to the 2 felony charges, conspiracy and acting as a foreign agent in the U.S. The charges are based on photos, texts, private Twitter messages, and other communications she had with Russians discussing her goal to infiltrate the Republican Party through the NRA. She's jailed without bond until her trial because obviously she's considered a flight risk. If found guilty, she could face up to 15 years in prison. So those were the 5 stories you most want to know about. I hope your story made it in, but if not, you can always vote again tomorrow afternoon on the Full Circle Facebook page. Last night, as you may remember, I was a little late for my own broadcast, but it wasn't my fault. Here's what held me up.
What's Anderson Full Circle? What's that?
We just started a show on Facebook that's on at 6:25 p.m. Every night, except I think tonight, because I think I'm going to miss it because I'm here. But it's only our 3rd day of doing it. So
yeah, you will.
You will really miss
matter.
It.
Wow, so that's dedication.
Yes.
Day 3. Sorry.
Well, I did literally run here, though, so that's a little bit of sign of dedication. To be fair, I took a car and then I ran down the block and then I ran into the newsroom, which the crew here was so lucky to capture on camera, which, yeah, of course, they're showing me again because I run like an idiot. So for tonight's 180, we decided I should take some of your questions on other crazy stunts I've had to pull to get on air or make slots, as TV producers like to say. Jennifer has 2 questions. What was the funniest thing you have done to get a story? Have you ever felt threatened, scared, trying to cover a story? I don't know about funny. I mean, yeah, I've certainly felt threatened and scared. During the revolution in Egypt, my team of my cameraman Neil Holsworth, my producer and I, we got pushed around, punched around a bit by a mob, and that was pretty frightening. We ended up going into hiding in a location, broadcasting from there. So Egypt was tough. Sarajevo was obviously really dangerous. So there's been a lot of places. Lisa asks, which location has been the most difficult to actually reach? You know, a lot of times it's just a question of logistics, like finding a car that has gas, finding an airplane or a helicopter to get you out in order to get to Beirut when during the fight between Hezbollah and Israel. We choppered in with the Marines into the U.S. Embassy. We got a ride on a chopper. We do that a lot. It's really just you do whatever it takes in order to try to get there as quickly as possible. Anne-Marie asks, when do you sleep? You're constantly traveling for work. And that's a good question. When do I sleep? I actually get a fair amount of sleep, but I'm actually pretty jet lagged today. So to be completely honest, I did take a nap today. Although I'm not sure sleeping an hour and a half is a nap. I think that's actually full-on REM sleep. So, but don't tell anybody. There were plenty of comments about my tardiness last night. Yes, I know. God, we're really belaboring this, aren't we? Let's see, my unorthodox running style. Oh, again, great. Thank you. Yes, I think we could cover that. Thanks for your questions, talking directly with you. I gotta say, it's one of the unique perks of doing this kind of a program. Let's move on to the goods and a story that'll leave you smiling. We've all had airplane talkers. First of all, I'm obsessed, as you may know, with people who take their shoes off and their socks off and are just walking around with their naked hobbit feet on the plane. It's my pet peeve. But airplane talkers are the ones who sit down next to you in the flight. They want to chat to you all the way when you're trying to sleep. Here's a case where a conversation on a plane actually inspired more than one act of kindness. Elementary school teacher Kimber Bermudez was heading to visit her family in Florida when a passenger struck up a conversation with her about where she worked. She explained she worked at a charter school in Chicago and that many of her students were from lower-income homes. She said she was proud of the fact that her school provided free breakfasts and lunches to the students. That's when the passenger behind her tapped her on the shoulder. Listen.
He said, "I apologize for listening," and handed me a wad of cash, and I had no idea how much money was there, but I saw a $100 bill on top. My parents had taught me, don't count money in front of people, that's rude. So I would find out later it's $500, and he started this chain reaction. The plane landed, the man across the aisle said, "I don't have much, but I hope this helps." And then the man in front of me, and I'm just still beyond baffled.
Kind of gave me chills. That in total, Kimber says she received $530, money she'll use for books for her classroom. She's hopeful this will spark others to contribute with the goal of a new playground. We certainly wish her and her students all the best. Before we go, I want to check what you had to say today. Among those of you watching live, 24% are A-OK with a kiddie-sized sugar high. 76% of you said you're in favor of the new ban on sugary drinks on kids' menus in Baltimore. I also want to take a look at how you reacted to the show in today's news. I've been feeling love here for a couple of days. Looks like today, overall, your strongest emotion was, once again, oh, that's nice love. Third day in a row. Thank you very much for that. That does it for Full Circle. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you'll join in again tomorrow on our page here with the things you want to know. We'll be back live at 6:25 p.m. Eastern. Till then, I hope you tune into AC 360 at 8 p.m. Eastern time on CNN. I'll see you then.